What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Tuesday, May 11th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, we have an 11-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. I'm going to give you a value play here. I like Jalen Harris from the Toronto Raptors playing the LA Clippers, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing point guards. But Jalen Harris scored 31 fantasy points last game, playing 29 minutes with a 21% usage rate. He's projected at 21 fantasy points here tonight, and even on FanDuel, that's 5 times value. But it's way over 5 times value on DraftKings because he's $4,200 FanDuel salary, but he's $1,100 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. So I like Jalen Harris here versus the LA Clippers. Okay, now I'm going to give you a stud pick. I like Stephen Curry from the Golden State Warriors playing the Phoenix Suns, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing point guards, but Stephen Curry has averaged 47.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 35% usage rate. He scored 53, 60, and 49 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 36, 29, and 31 minutes. Now this is a back-to-back, but I do expect Stephen Curry to get plenty of minutes here, and I think he can score 50 fantasy points or more and get you 5 times value or more. He's $10,300 FanDuel salary, and he's $300 less on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 229.5 points scored in this game. So I like Stephen Curry here versus the Phoenix Suns. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I like Dillon Brooks from the Memphis Grizzlies playing the Dallas Mavericks, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing shooting guards. But Dillon Brooks has averaged 26.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 26% usage rate. He scored 36, 25, and 14 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 36, and 35 minutes. He's projected at 27.9 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's 5.8 times value, and that's just a point over his season average, so he's totally capable of getting that 27.9 projected points. And if he gets you 30 fantasy points or more, he'll be crushing value. So on FanDuel, he's $4,800 FanDuel salary, but then he is $1,000 more on DraftKings, so I definitely prefer this as a FanDuel play. He scored 24, 26, and 28 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Mavericks, but I like that he's played over 30 minutes in all three of his last games. So I like Dillon Brooks here versus the Dallas Mavericks. Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and then we'll send you $100 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you. Now guys, just as a quick note, we just released a free DFS contest on Draft Dashboard for MLB and NBA for DraftKings and FanDuel There's over $500 available in the prize pool, and this is a totally free contest you can enter as a Draft Dashboard member. So make sure to click the link in the description of this video, give Draft Dashboard a try, and you can start playing in our free DFS contest and compete to win some money. Okay, another shooting guard that I like is Terrence Davis from the Sacramento Kings, playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have the absolute worst defense overall, and they give up the second most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Terrence Davis, he scored 37, 35, and 29 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 29, 32, and 19 minutes. He's projected at 28 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5.3 times value. So again, if he scores over 30 fantasy points here, he's going to crush value. He's $5,300 FanDuel salary, and he's the same price on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites. And he scored 37, 26, 31, and 29 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. This might be one of my favorite plays on the slate. It's a fantastic matchup, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 224.5 points scored in this game. So I like Terrence Davis here versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like Michael Porter Jr. from the Denver Nuggets playing the Charlotte Hornets, who have the 9th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Michael Porter Jr., he's averaged 33.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He scored 40, 45, and 28 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 33, 38, and 25 minutes. He's projected at 35 fantasy points here tonight, and that's on FanDuel, that's just about 5 times value. He's $7,100 FanDuel salary, but he's $1,400 more on DraftKings. So I prefer that FanDuel price. You know what? I'll give you a good DraftKings play, because I would play Michael Porter Jr. on FanDuel, but I'm probably not playing him on DraftKings. So right after this, I'll give you a good DraftKings play. But Michael Porter Jr., he scored 43 and 39 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Hornets, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 218.5 points scored in this game. It's a great matchup, so I like Michael Porter Jr. here versus the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, so for that DraftKings play at the small forward position, I like Evan Fournier from the Boston Celtics playing the Miami Heat, who have a good defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing small forwards. Evan Fournier, he's averaged 28.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 23% usage rate. And he scored 49, 33, and 36 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 35, 36, and 28 minutes. He's projected at 29 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's 4.7 times value because he's $6,200 FanDuel salary, but he's $800 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. So I'll be playing Evan Fournier on DraftKings and Michael Porter Jr. on FanDuel. Now Evan Fournier has scored 49, 38, and 31 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Heat, and he scored 33 to 49 fantasy points in his last 4 games, so he's on fire. That DraftKings price is just way too low, so I like Evan Fournier, especially on DraftKings here versus the Miami Heat. Okay, now here is a value play, a high risk, high reward play, probably a FanDuel play only for me, but I like Joe Harris from the Brooklyn Nets playing the Chicago Bulls, who have a middle of the pack defense overall, and although they've been pretty good versus opposing small forwards, Joe Harris, he's averaged 22.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 16% usage rate. Now, he's only scored 21, 14, and 15 fantasy points in the last 3 games, but he's been playing 33, 33, and 33 minutes in the last 3 games. So 33 minutes per game for the last 3 games. It's a ton of minutes, and he's projected at 23.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 6.1 times value. He's $3,900 FanDuel salary, but he's $1,100 more on DraftKings. So I love that FanDuel price. Just looks like that FanDuel price is way too low, considering that he'd get you about 6 times value even if he just hits his season average of 23 fantasy points. So that's pretty great. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 232.5 points scored in this game, and he scored 21, 23, 15, 45, and 27 fantasy points in the last 5 games versus the Bulls. So I like Joe Harris, especially on FanDuel here versus the Chicago Bulls. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. I'll start you off here with a stud pick. I like Domantas Sabonis from the Indiana Pacers playing the Philadelphia 76ers, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing power forwards. But Domantas Sabonis, he's averaged 46.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 36 minutes per game with a 24% usage rate. But take a look at his last 3 games. He scored 75, 70, and 52 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 38, 43, and 41 minutes. So he's playing monster minutes. He's projected at 49.7 fantasy points here tonight. That's just about 5 times value, but you see he's got that 70 plus fantasy point upside, so he's got a huge ceiling, and he's $10,200 FanDuel salary, and he's $200 more on DraftKings. So I like Domantas Sabonis here versus the Philadelphia 76ers. Okay, now here's kind of a long shot. This is a high risk, high reward play, but it does look like he's going to play tonight. So if he does play, I like Aaron Gordon from the Denver Nuggets playing the Charlotte Hornets, who have the 9th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Aaron Gordon, he's averaged 26.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 21% usage rate. He scored 21 and 6 fantasy points in the last 2 games, playing 30 and 22 minutes. So he took a game off. I think he's going to come back tonight. And he did play 30 minutes in his last game. So if he can get 25 minutes or more, I think he's going to have no problem hitting value on FanDuel. He's projected at 25.7 fantasy points here tonight. And on FanDuel, that's 6.6 times value. He's $3,900 FanDuel salary, and he's $900 more on DraftKings. He scored 36, 37, 28, and 43 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Hornets. Vegas thinks there's going to be 218.5 points scored in this game. It's a great matchup, so I like Aaron Gordon here versus the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, moving on to the center position. I'm going to give you another stud pick here. You're going to have your choice between the studs you want to play because there's a lot of value on the slate. So I like Nikola Vucevic with the Chicago Bulls playing the Brooklyn Nets, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Nikola Vucevic has averaged 46.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 30% usage rate, but he scored 54, 55, and 58 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 36, 32, and 30 minutes. He's projected at 46.4 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he scores 50 fantasy points or more, gets you 5 times value or more. He's 9,800 FanDuel salary, and he's 500 more on DraftKings. Now, Vegas thinks there's going to be 232.5 points scored in this game, and he scored 52, 56, 41, and 68 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Nets. It's a good matchup, and it's not a back-to-back, so he's fresh, he's ready to go. One of my favorite stud picks for tonight, so I like Nikolai Vucevic here versus the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, if you're looking to save some salary at the center position, take a look at Moses Brown from the Oklahoma City Thunder playing the Sacramento Kings, who have the 6th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing centers. Moses Brown, he's averaged 23 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 21 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 38, 18, and 17 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 25, 19, and 27 minutes. So he's projected at 24.4 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5 times value. He's 4,900 FanDuel salary, and he's the same price on DraftKings. So he scored 38 and 32 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Kings, and Vegas thinks there's going to be 224.5 points scored in this game. It's an awesome matchup, and we saw he's got 30 plus fantasy point upside. He's got good player versus team history, so I like Moses Brown here versus the Sacramento Kings. If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video, or just go to DraftDashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.